last night on April 15th, it was the GOP endorsement meeting in Claremont County for 3 races, 2 separate municipal court judge races and the municipal clerk of courts race. I'm going to take you through leading up to that endorsement meeting and what happened during that endorsement meeting. So just as some quick background, I am vehemently against endorsement in primary races. I think it has no place. That's where GOP voters get to pick their candidates, not party insiders get to pick who should win the race. But these races, the 2 municipal judges, the municipal clerk of courts, are nonpartisan field races, which I feel a little different about because there is no primary. So I'm not as averse to endorsements in these kind of races. But we have a flawed, rigged endorsement policy in the GOP Claremont, and I'm going to point out as we go here 3 flaws with it. One has to do with how the voting works, one has to do with speeches, and then the third point on this chart is one has to do with that we endorse before the filing deadline. So we are endorsing candidates before we know who might have even filed to run, who might be a Democrat, an independent, or a Republican that chose not to participate in the endorsement process. So the lead up to this particular endorsement meeting involved a couple of things. One is we had conducted in Union Township a Republican Party candidate forum that was live streamed. You can watch the whole thing. That included the candidates for the 2 judge positions, Nagles and Miles, and included the 3 candidates for municipal clerk of courts, Velardo, Rudd, and Camphouse. In addition, there is a secret meeting of the executive committee of the Republican Party that is closed door called the screening committee, where the candidates have to appear and get asked questions and make speeches. I put together detailed notes from that meeting, which I'm sharing with this post as a link so you can read them. There's nothing controversial in them, but about what questions were asked and what the candidates said in that secret screening committee meeting. And I distributed those notes before the endorsement meeting to the entire Claremont County Republican Central Committee, which leads me to meltdown number 1. The very fact that I made notes from the secret screening committee meeting of the executive committee and circulated them to the Central Committee of the Republican Party caused a meltdown. The culture is so secretive and so against information that merely sharing information of what questions were asked and what candidates said from the executive committee, the screening committee, to the entire Central Committee of the Republican Party is seen as being an offense against the party. So these are 3 notes from Party Chair Greg Simpson, bitching me out, tearing me a new one, claiming that I'm a Democrat. He continually insists that I'm in league with the Democrats, etc., etc. But all motivated, you can look at the title lines of these notes, by me sharing detailed notes of the screening committee to the entire Central Committee. It's completely ridiculous. It's like mental cases that sharing information within the party to the Central Committee, who are the people who vote on endorsement, is a bad thing. We shouldn't have any information on candidates. People should just vote how people like James Kidwell tell them to vote. It is ridiculous. It is absolutely ridiculous. And I wish that more people within the Republican Party would stand up like me and say, it is effing absurd and it is a clown show joke for people like Greg Simpson to go into apoplexy just because information gets shared with the whole committee who has to make the actual decision. So another thing that happened in the lead up is I made a couple Facebook posts kind of reflecting my positions. The first one had to do with the Clerk of Courts race. I had a feeling that there could be a surprise in this race. We will see that when I talk about what happens. And I pointed out that Jean Schmidt thought she was going to get endorsed for a House race and was not. John Becker thought he was going to get endorsed for commissioner and was not. And Tim Rudd, the incumbent municipal clerk of courts, was up and thought he was going to get endorsed. So, and we'll talk about what happened. The other thing I did is I had a post that took exception to a gun decision, a Second Amendment decision by Municipal Court Judge Jason Nagles. The decision involved a person in their home with a gun, where they were charged with possessing a gun in their home while they were drunk. And I'll talk more about it a little bit, but you can read about it and research it. I'm not going to go into detail here. That caused meltdown number 2, particularly the Jason Nagel thing, where for the first time ever, I had a sitting judge write a detailed response to a Facebook post that I made. And as I said, I'm going to share a link with this video where you can read his response and my comments on his response that I thought was ridiculous, by the way. I completely stand by the points that I made relating to his ruling. It was a bad ruling, and it's a gun grabber ruling, and it should not have happened in Claremont County when we say that we are pro-Second Amendment. But the first part of his detailed email reacting to me was claiming that the candidate forum that had happened in Union Township was unfair. You can watch the whole thing on video. It was live streamed. There was no manipulation of anything. It was completely fair. In fact, Jason Nagel complimented me on the forum after it was done. So did Judge Miles, who had participated. And it wasn't until 6 days later, when I happened to criticize one of Jason Nagel's judicial decisions, that he goes into a rant about how unfair he was treated in this forum, which he was not, which, by the way, shows me the kind of temperament this guy has. It's an embarrassing temperament, and it makes me even more confident that maybe this guy isn't the right guy to be a judge, especially in Claremont County. But in his gun grabber decision, which is the second part of his email that he sent about my post, he fails to mention things like the Brady Center to Prevent Gun Violence and the Giffords Law Center to Prevent Gun Violence, two of the most liberal gun-grabbing votes in America, actually supported Jason Nagel's decision and filed an amicus brief supporting that decision in the Supreme Court. Now, you can read the file that I'm going to share with this on Jason Nagel's comments and my comments. You can go back and read my old post to get very well informed about this ruling, read the Supreme Court decision. It was a bad decision. It never should have been a case that was handled in Claremont County, let alone something that ended up going all the way to the Supreme Court and basically established a gateway case for red flag laws where the government can come into your home and, for reasons it determines, without any particular behavior being cited, take away guns from you or have you charged with a crime. In this case, that if you were drunk in your home with a gun that you legally possessed. It was a bad ruling, and I just like to point out the hypocrisy of a political class that I am totally sick of, that stands up and tells us how they are so pro-Second Amendment or they are so pro-life. When you actually look at what they do, it is bullshit. They go for the photo op, stand with a piece of paper. We got a resolution that says we're pro-Second Amendment and we're a sanctuary county. It is, first off, it's wrong. I'm totally against sanctuary stuff, period, whether liberals or conservatives do it. But it is bullshit, waste of time stuff. And I am so sick of supposedly conservative Republicans standing up and telling us that they're pro-life or pro-Second Amendment. When you actually look at what they do, they are not. They do not make the decisions that actually support those things. And that's why we've got so many effing rhinos that are Republicans that tell us, well, I got endorsed by Buckeye Firearms. That means I'm good on guns. No, it means that you have a talking point on guns that clouds that your actual record is terrible. And that is the record of Jason Nagel. His judicial decision on the Second Amendment case was wrong. It ended up getting upheld by the Supreme Court only because the two Democratic justices sided with two Republican justices, including Pat DeWine, to uphold his decision. But that's just kind of the lead up into what happened in the endorsement meeting on April 15th. So let's start with the two municipal judge races. They're two separate races. There was Judge Kevin Miles and Judge Jason Nagel, and they were both up for endorsement. The first one that went was for the vote was Kevin Miles. He got endorsed overwhelmingly. 99% of the people endorsed him. When you vote in a first round, and this will come up, you can vote for the candidate or you can vote for none, which means you don't want any endorsement. So one person here voted for no endorsement. It wasn't me, actually, that did that. But so he got endorsed 99% of the people. So let's go to the second one, Jason Nagel. He got endorsed 102 to 7, again, with 7 nones. 102 to 7, which means 94% of the solid Republicans that are Second Amendment proud voted for Jason Nagel to be endorsed. And that's great because maybe somebody can run against Jason to the right, since there's going to be time for them to file, and they can point out that Jason Nagel is strongly supported in his judicial decisions by the Brady Center Against Gun Violence and by the Giffords Law Center to Prevent Gun Violence, two people that are wanting to take away your guns. And they support Jason Nagel's judicial decision on the Second Amendment that you can read more about when you look at the letter that I'm going to point you to, how he responded in email and my responses. So now let's move on to the Municipal Clerk of Courts part of the endorsement reading. You have 3 candidates here. This is a picture from our candidate forum in Union Township. And you have Tim Rudd, Paul Camphouse, and Ralph Villardo, who were the 3 candidates that were being considered for endorsement. Here's what happened in round 1 on the voting for these people. It was 47 Camphouse, 44 for the incumbent Rudd, 16 for Villardo, and 2 nones, 2 for no endorsement. So nobody got the 60%, which that's the threshold. You need 60% to be considered endorsed. And if not attained, the top 2 advance, and anything that's not the top 2 get dropped. So in round 2, you can only vote for Camphouse and Rudd. This is going to be important. You can't vote for Villardo, and you can't vote for none anymore. You can only vote for Camphouse and Rudd. Here's what happened in round 2. So 62 voted for Camphouse, 47 voted for Rudd. Remember, that's the only 2 allowed votes now. Nobody got to 60%. So, but watch these. It'll be interesting to watch what happens here. But Camphouse is pretty close. I think he needed 65 to be endorsed to be 60%. He had 62. So if he could pick up 3. I want to point out something here. In the endorsement policy we used to have before the goofball policy we have now got in effect, is at this point after round 2, if nobody, when you're better to say when you're going to enter the final round, if nobody had been endorsed, the candidates would come back up and give speeches again. They could lobby people to try to shift the votes. We don't do that anymore. Okay, so speeches, no speeches take place. So we just keep voting without any speeches. So nobody got to 60%. Now we're going to go to the final round vote. Here's the final round vote. Round 3, Camphouse got 57. So it's interesting. Look, Camphouse lost 5 votes. Lost 5 votes. There had been no speeches. Rudd went from 47 to 51. He gained 4 votes, and if you look, there was 1 disqualified ballot. If you basically F up your ballot, it doesn't count, like it's not a correct name written on there, then it doesn't count. So there's 1 disqualified ballot in this round. So nobody got to 60%. But look at that. Camphouse lost 5, Rudd gained 4, and 1 became invalid. Why is this important? What's happening here? Why would that happen? It's because the 18 people, the 16 that voted for Villardo and the 2 that voted for none in the first round are, maybe they're people now wanting no endorsement, but they're not allowed to vote for no endorsement anymore because the dumbass endorsement policy we have doesn't let you do that unless, basically doesn't let you do that past round 1, but in deference to our Central Committee Chair, Dennis Cooper, there is a case where I guess if none advanced to the round 2, it was a top 2 vote getter, you could, but that ain't never going to happen. So the reality is you get stuck. So what's happening here in round 3 is people are saying, so the people, those 18, they split up between Rudd and Camphouse in round 2. And look, oh shit, Camphouse almost is going to get endorsed. He's got 62. So what they do is they have to guess and shift their votes around to try to prevent there from being an endorsement. It is absolutely stupid the way this works. This is how David Hubel got endorsed before, because people couldn't vote for none. People are guessing how to vote for to try to keep there from being an endorsement. And what would have happened here if enough people would have shifted? We had 5 people shift away from Camphouse in the 3rd round. What if enough people would have shifted that, hell, Rudd accidentally gets endorsed? Because people are shifting around. If all 16 of those had gone for Camphouse, or 18, and they all shifted because they thought they needed to shift to keep there from being an endorsement, you could get a endorsement that nobody wanted. That's why it's so dumb how this process works, and it's so obviously dumb, but the brain trust that has come up with this process keeps reminding us that we all adopted it, and it's fantastic. But we had no endorsement in the municipal clerk of courts race, which I think is great. I think the smears on Ralph Villardo have been wrong. I think that if Camphouse wants it, he should run clean, not be handed to you by an endorsement process in Claremont County. I would love to see a vibrant race here. But the real big news in this is that Rudd, the incumbent municipal clerk of courts, Republican person, did not get endorsed, which is, talk about awkward at the office the next day. The other thing that was funny, and I had it written down here, is, Rudd gave as part of his speech about how this was his life's work, and give me one more term to complete my life's work. Well, I don't know what will happen here, but might want to think about some other life's work. And frankly, it's kind of a goofy thing to say, that somehow being clerk of courts for more and more terms is your life's work. It's kind of silly. But the key thing is there was no endorsement. So what's going to happen next? Well, the endorsement meeting was on April 15th. That means there's well over 2 weeks till the filing deadline, which is May 3rd. So, hey, if you see there's no endorsement people out there in the municipal clerk of courts race, hey, maybe you want to take a shot, fill out some petitions and send them in. That's why it's so dumb. I think even Greg Simpson says, of the Republican committees that do endorsements, even he says we're the only one that we know of that does them before the filing deadline. So, and historically, that's to get people to drop out of races. But in this situation, when there's no endorsement, people can jump in. When David Ubel did not get endorsed for commissioner, I think in 2018, 2 people immediately filed petitions that had not even participated in the process. And that could happen here. So who's going to file for clerk of courts? And then judge, you've got Miles and Nagel, and somebody could file there. I don't think it's as likely. But I would love to see somebody file to run against Jason Nagles. Somebody could run to the right of him on Second Amendment issues based on his ruling. And I think that's why Jason Nagle's so uncomfortable by that point being brought up. When you've got Giffords and Brady on your team, that's not a good sign in Claremont County when you're trying to tell people that you're pro-Second Amendment. Thanks for watching, and have a great weekend.